being led. I was thinking about how to do that. And the best example that I could come up with to show an example of following another's lead is my wife. I could literally say, follow her example on how to be led. And I could end the sermon right now. But I'm going to make an attempt. There are some lessons that you could speak, but another's life preaches a louder sermon even without the words. I was counting it up, in 28 years, about 5,000 lessons, give or take, to a church and to churches. I don't think those lessons can hold a candle to the life that my wife has lived. And so I'm humbled knowing that I could say words, but the example that she is to me and to my children and to the brotherhood of what it looks like to follow another person's lead who is human and sometimes makes some decisions that could be hard to follow. You just don't know what it's like. She makes life so easy, and she is easy to lead. And so in that example, I think of what Gideon said in Judges chapter 7. He was going to do a task, and he told the people, in Judges 7 verse 17, he said, "Look on me and do likewise." Not many people could say such a thing. They could say, do as I say, don't do as I do. But I'm going to say, do as she does. If you do as she does, I guarantee you, every husband would be a happy man. The children would have stability in the home. They would have the best example laid before them on what it looks like to follow her husband's lead. This is a bit of a different lesson than I've ever preached that I could think of. It's not, I just want to make some caveats because I thought about this. It's not about a competition or anything, so I don't want anybody to take it that way at all. Please don't. This is just simply me trying to think of Proverbs 31 when it says, "Her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her." And I thought about that, and I don't do that enough. It's not about trying to compare anything. Sometimes women especially get caught up in trying to compare themselves with other people. And sometimes they compare themselves with other husbands and whatnot. Please don't go in that direction. That's not what I'm trying to do. So make that caveat first. I am trying to say, in the example of her willingness to submit to a man who is flawed, follow her lead. First off, you have to recognize she follows God first. That's what makes all this possible. Because if it was not for that principle and that command to follow God, why would she want to follow me? In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, we see that God has an order of things. He says in 1 Corinthians 11 verse 3, "But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God." You see, Melina does not try to fight against God's order of things. She's not trying to be a man. She's not trying to take the man's role. She never has done that. She does not try to lead through me. She doesn't try, sometimes You've heard people say, well, the husband's the head of the wife, but the wife is the neck that turns the head. You don't understand. She has never, ever tried to do that. She has never tried to manipulate me. She has never tried to get me to do what she wants. Now, she might ask me. Hopefully I listen. We usually talk things out. And if there happens to be a disagreement, most of the time there's not. 99.99% there's never that. But in the case, those rare occasions where, let's say, we've talked it out, and at my best judgment and her best judgment, we disagree. And I say, we're going to do this. I've heard you out. I've listened to you. I've considered your point of view. But we're doing this instead. I have no doubt in my mind she will do that. No questions asked. Further. No pouting. No manipulation, no guilt trip, no nagging, there's none of that. Ever. There's no drama in my household from her. Because she never creates it. She knows that God made Adam first, and then He made Eve for Adam. In Genesis 2 verse 18, the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a help meet for him." My wife understands this principle. Regardless of what society says, I know there's perversions both ways. There are people who think that's antiquated and outdated. I'm not doing that, and they fight against that. She's never done that. But then there are others who maybe perhaps in their household, maybe the husband is a knucklehead, and the wife cries out because of how she's mistreated, and it's as an overreaction to that, creates some kind of other false, like feminism of some sort, the way the society's done. She's never done that either. She's just simply trying to follow God's will. She knows man was made first. Woman was made for man, not man for the woman. And that's what Paul also reiterates in 1 Corinthians 11 about the same principle. 1 Corinthians 11 verse 7. "For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God. But the woman is the glory of the man. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man." She doesn't fight against, she doesn't say, "I don't like that." I don't like it that I'm made for you. She doesn't do that. She believes what God said, and she's embraced it whole heart in body and action in every way possible. I don't have to browbeat her and say, "Hey, why don't you get this concept?" I don't have to do that. I don't have to train her. I don't have to do anything like that. I just simply say, and I just simply observe what she knows and what she does. She gets it. Now, after the fall of Adam and Eve, when Adam sinned and Eve sinned, the nature of their sin was different. Eve was deceived by Satan, and then she gave to her husband. Adam was not deceived, Paul says in 1 Timothy 2. The nature of he sinned, but I think what that's saying is he knew better. But he did it because of the influence of his wife. I have never I cannot think of a single occasion where she has tried to tempt me to do anything wrong. I cannot think of a single example. I can think of examples where I should have been the leader and I should have said, no, we're not doing blank. But in the cases where she's simply exercising her conscience, she will do the right thing because she wants to follow God. Then she doesn't command me that I have to do as she's done. She just simply does the right thing, and that is a good influence on me. Let me give you an example. We were in a movie theater. PG movie, mind you, okay? So don't jump to any conclusion. PG movie. But the movie had some inappropriate innuendos. It was crude. She said, you do what you want to do. I can't watch this. She got up. She left the theater. Now here's me drawn into the movie. I want to know what happens. Okay? That's the way. And I'm thinking to myself, I want to watch the rest of the movie. But by her example, I'm thinking, I don't want to be a jerk and sit here and watch the rest of the movie and she's gone out. I get up and I go. Now, she didn't tell me to do it. She didn't, and it wasn't, you got to understand this too about her. It wasn't her saying, you're going to do as I do. You know, she's not leading me. She's just simply doing what she knows best to do. And by that example, she left a good example for me. That's her exercising her conscience because she wants to please God first. But when she exercises her conscience, she doesn't force that in every choice upon me. She did it because that was her decision. Now, I think it was a good example to follow. I was willing to follow that. You know, whenever somebody does the right thing, it makes it easier to do as they do. But in Genesis 3, verse 16, on this same vein, it says, after the fall, that God told Adam and Eve certain things. But look what he said to Eve in Genesis 3:16. Part of that, I'm focused on part of the verse. Thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. That's the King James. Now I looked at 9 translations, and there's only one variant to that, really. Out of the 9, 8 of them say something of the sort, your desire shall be to your husband, or for your husband, or toward your husband. There's one exception that I found, and that the ESV says, your desire shall be contrary to your husband. But, in case you're wondering about it, does it mean contrary to your husband, or does it mean your desire will be to your husband? Well, the footnote even in the ESV, which is the only other variant here, actually says, or shall be toward. So my conclusion is, and you can disagree with me later if you want. Point is the same either way. God is saying she and her desire will be for her husband. Even if you take the ESV, her desire should be contrary to her husband. In the cases where her desire is one thing and her husband's another, God is saying she needs to follow her husband's desire more than her own. That's the point. And he shall rule over you, the next part kind of clarifies that, makes that point clear. There's going to be times where her desire is one thing, his desire is another. There might be a clash. Who's the leader? Who's the follower? Well, in this case, he followed the woman, which was wrong in this case. In Ephesians chapter 5, I think about this verse. I don't have to fight with my wife about this principle either. There's no clash. There's not even any tension. It's not like there's no bending of the rules. There's no trying to twist this verse to say, yeah, but, like a lot of people do. Sometimes whenever verses like this are mentioned, sometimes there's some joke. But nobody's ever going to do that, or nobody really believes that anymore. There's something like that. Not with Melina. In Ephesians 5, verse 22, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Now, he's not saying he is the Lord. You get that. But obey your husbands as unto the Lord. In other words, obey the Lord. And the Lord said, wives, obey your husbands. So if you're going to obey the Lord, a wife needs to obey her husband. It's really simple. Simple to understand. Hard for a lot to follow. Not for Melina. She gets this hook, line, and sinker. She obeys me like she does the Lord. And I'm not the Lord, but yet she obeys me. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. She's not obedient to me in some things. It's not like she only obeys me when she agrees with me. And then when she doesn't agree with me, forget it. There's no exceptions in her life and example. She obeys me in everything. I don't think I had told this example until just a few recently, but at the risk of making myself look very bad, it says more against me and more for her. I'm going to go ahead and tell it. I'm going to repeat it. For the purpose for you to understand how obedient she is. Some of the men in another state, we were in another church, we were out, after church was over, we're standing outside, around the outside area. The men are talking, and it's lighthearted. It's a lighthearted conversation. One of the men says something about his wife being obedient. And he says, hey, my wife would skip to the van if I told her to. I said, let's see it. He calls his wife's name, in case she's listening to this later. I won't call the name. He says, skip to the van. And she looks at him with a puzzled look and she says, why? And then, forgive me for doing this, but I knew the answer. I said, watch this. And I said, Melina, skip to the van. She skipped to the van. I'm a knucklehead, okay? So, but that shows you, she didn't know what we were doing. She didn't hear our private conversation over here. It wasn't a game. She does this. I don't have to browbeat her. I don't have to beg her. I don't have to, there's no, as I said, she's easy to lead. And I give that example as just one small example of the many times she will do what I need her to do. And it's because she respects God. She respects me. Because God wants her to respect me. If I say, let's move to Danville, Kentucky, when we first got married, she says yes. 5 hours away from her family. And there we are. If I say, let's move back home, she says, okay. We move back home. We're there 3 years. And I say, I think it's time for us to move on. Let's move 3 hours away from your family again. She says, okay, I'll go wherever you go. No questions asked. I pick out the apartment that she's never seen because she trusts me. I don't know how many women would do that. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you might. Great example to follow. She didn't say, well, does it have this? Does the kitchen have this? Does the bathrooms have this? Is it clean? She didn't even do any of that. Now, naturally, she's probably got some curiosities. I had to go on the trip by myself to pick out the place, and she couldn't leave at the time, so she allowed me to. She left that up to me. When we got there, she said, you did good. Great choice. She supported the decision. I got to tell you something else. When we bought our first home, we were living in an apartment at the time. I said, let's do something a little strange. Instead of us buying our first home for us to live in, let's buy it as an investment. That maybe this will be smarter in the long run. We'll buy it as an investment. Now, mind you, this was a nice little house. Would have been a great place for us to live. She would have enjoyed that house. She would have loved that house. But in my best judgment, I thought at the time, I think it's better that we hold off on those feelings. Let's buy this as an investment first. She says, okay. She watched me purchase this house, sell the house that she would have enjoyed. She never complained. Next house, exactly the same. Except I didn't sell it at first. I rented it out to a renter at first. While someone else is living in the house she would have loved to have lived in. And yet, she understood. And even if she didn't fully understand what I was trying to do, she supported that decision. A year later, the renter moves out. I say, let's move in. It's December the 25th, and it's snowing. She says, let's move then. We move into the house. 3 months later, I say, I think it's time we move from this town and move to North Carolina. So it took me, we got to live there maybe 6 months by the time we moved. When we moved, that's whenever I picked out that other apartment. We lived in that apartment for 2 years. I bought a piece of land with plans at the time. We're going to put a house tailored to us. So we pick out everything. I let her pick it out. We picked out how the floor plan, we picked out how it's supposed to go in a nice wooded setting in the mountains, beautiful lot. Her goals and everything and dreams of living on that property is heightened because I did this, right? But I changed my mind. I say, nah, I don't think that's a good move financially. Let's change that plan. Here's a double wide that's a foreclosure on a much lesser lot in the town, not as pretty of a lot. I think it would be better for us to move into it financially. She says, okay. That's how obedient and submissive she is. We live in that place for 2 years, and I say, let's sell it and move in this 2-bedroom rental we had when we have 3 kids at the time. So we move in there, in the rental that's 2 bedrooms. So 2 years later, I say, let's sell this thing and move into another rental that we had, that I had previously been renting out, but the renter happened to move out. I move her into that house. 2 months later, we sold it. We made money. But you know what she did? You know how many complaints I got from her during any of that? There's 0 complaints. And the reason why is because she understood what I was trying to do. And she supported that. That would drive so many women batty. I know it. Okay? But I'm just trying to give you some real life examples to show you how obedient she is. We repeated that process many times since that till now. And some of those occasions have been good, some of those bad, some of maybe lesser, I'm going to say bad, but some of the houses more enjoyable than others. But also in that process, we might live in one while we're fixing it up, but wait until right before I sell it to fix it up. We didn't get to enjoy it in its fixed up state the whole time, mind you. No complaints. While many might give their husband like a to-do list and hound them, when are you going to get this done? When are you going to get this done? I need you to stop what you're doing right now and do this, and guilt trip. Never, ever does she ever do that. She makes life so easy on me. She respects that sometimes there are things she'll ask. But here's what happens when she asks. That sometimes I get to it. Sometimes I get to it way later than I should. That's on me, not on her. But when I do that, and sometimes I never get to it on some things. But when I've done that, she doesn't nag me. She doesn't guilt trip me. She doesn't bring it up continually. She lets it go. She gives her suggestion, and then I either do it or I don't, and then she lets it go. What an example. This is why I'm such a happy man. This is why I feel like I could conquer just about anything. I need to be better for her. But there's no fault. I can't find any faults from that end of following my leadership. Some of my decisions have been a roller coaster ride of stability, mind you. Like the time I thought, let's start a vending business. Or the time I thought, well, let's open up a real estate company. Now that ended up being very successful. I did pretty good at that one. The other one's not so much. But I will tell you that business of running a real estate company was stressful and nerve-wracking from the point of view of I did not know where my next check was coming from. And I did not have a steady check. It was either you make a sale and it's maybe a good sale. It rains or pours, and then there's a period of time where you don't know when the next one's coming. That would drive some people nuts. Do you know what she did during that time? Supported me. I would get up. I would leave the house. I would show property all day. I would sit. She never knew when to prepare the meal because I didn't know what time I'd be home. She didn't guilt trip me. I don't know when to prepare this meal. What time you going to be here? She might wonder and she might ask me out of courtesy. But whenever I say I don't know how long this might take, that's the way that ended. These are just a few examples. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8, I'm reminded when God told Abraham, Hebrews 11, verse 8, by faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. That is Melina with me to a core. I've taken her places where she had no idea. She just went. Because I asked. Verse 9, by faith he sojourned in the land of promise as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. He didn't have a permanent place. You see what God was asking him, but he went because God asked him. Verse 10, for he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. That's Melina. She doesn't get attached to the houses that we've been in. I'm not saying there's anything, if you do something different, this is not a slight against anybody else. I'm not telling you to go and move your family around like we have, so don't take that. I'm giving you some examples of the kind of obedience that I've witnessed in my wife. She's not attached to the place. She's attached to me. She's attached to God and to our kids. Proverbs 31, verse 26 says, she openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. The brethren have always said, Andy, the reason why we have you is because of Melina. It's more for her, because of her, than because of you. And I get that. I understand that. As a preacher, I could not do what I do in any effect at all if I had to worry that she was gossiping. I never had to worry about things that I talked to her about among me and her, that being spread to some other household. Never have to worry about that. There are things that are private between me and her in our relationship. I never have to worry about her betraying that privacy or trust and going and talking to somebody else about it. If she has something she wants to tell me, she tells me, and we work it out. And what's between me and her never leaves that. I never have to worry about her going on the internet and asking other people for validation of what she wants to get me to do. I've seen that happen. I've seen that. That happens among preachers' wives. There's like a preacher's wife group of some sort where they ask each other, what do you do whenever your husband won't do this or he's doing this? And they're asking each other questions in order to try to tell on their husbands. I don't have to worry about her doing that to me. I never have to worry about her going and asking someone, if you wanted to get your husband to do this or this, who do you agree with? And then they agree with her, and then she runs back, and I don't have to worry about that. If she wanted something from me, she would tell me. She don't have to go talk to anybody else about it. First Peter 3. This is a bit different of example because this context is about when the man is not following God and the woman is. In our case, we're both trying to follow God, but I want you to see what my wife does and follow her example. In verse 1, likewise, you wives, be in subjection to your own husbands. She's not in subjection to other husbands. It's not. She's in subjection to me. When she left her mother and father's household, she never went back trying to instigate things with her parents with me. She never went and betrayed things about us to her parents. She was my wife and always has been. But then it says, if any obey not the word, they may without the word be won by the conduct of the wives, while they behold your chaste conduct coupled with fear. And that she does have. I don't have to worry about her trying to display her outward beauty in order to get attention from somebody else. She belongs to me and no one else. And I don't have to worry about her trying to seek approval from others in that way. Verse 4, but let it be the hidden man of the heart. And here's where she really excels. In that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. She is meek. She is quiet. You know, there are times where she never says anything. And there might be some occasions in the 28 years of preaching where someone might have assumed, understand this, I chose to preach. She didn't. She chose me, and she supported me in that. But sometimes brethren have an idea of what they think a preacher's wife ought to be. Maybe that she should always be the one to teach a class or always be the one to do certain things in various roles. And while she doesn't always want to do certain things, there might be an expectation that is, think about it, probably uncomfortable for her sometimes. Yet, she doesn't complain about those things either. She's not a public speaker. So, it's not really her to want to say, okay, I want to teach a class, a women's class or something. Let's say something like that. Yet there have been times where she might have been asked to do it and she might make herself do it out of the discomfort and do that. But it's all because she's meek and quiet. She doesn't try to rule or do anything manipulative whatsoever. She doesn't wander as a busybody and as a whisperer and a talebearer. She's not loud in those ways. She's not instigating in other households. Sometimes there might be some who might wonder, is she thinking something because of some choices she's made? They might wonder, but they didn't hear her say anything. If they got the wrong impression, it's only in their head, not from anything she's ever said. But then this next part. For after this manner in the old time, the holy women also, who trusted in God, adorned themselves, being in subjection to their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as you do well and are not afraid with any amazement. Now, when she called him Lord, that's not God, okay? That term Lord is a lot like our term sir. She calls me sir all the time. She says, yes, sir. Now, maybe I should caveat. The other day we were somewhere and someone said, yes, ma'am, to a lady. And she said, I'm not a ma'am. Is that a northern thing where you think if you're a ma'am, it must be old and or something like that? In the South, we were taught you say yes, sir, yes, ma'am. It doesn't matter the age. It's a respectful thing. That's the way she means it. I'm not telling you you have to be exactly like that, but you should follow her example of being polite and respectful in that way. And I can tell you, you can say it's my ego talking, or you can say whatever you want to say about that, but I can tell you some of the sweetest words I hear are, "I love you, sir." And she says it all the time. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. I don't have to wonder, is she trying to do something that I don't know about? Is she hiding something with the kids? Or is she doing something over here? Is she talking to somebody else when I told her I really didn't want her to? I never have to worry about that. I trust her because she's shown again and again by her track record she's not going to do anything that hurts me. She does good all the days of her life. Proverbs 14:1, every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. While there are a lot of women who take their house and walk up to and start pulling things off of the house and tearing it down by the words, negative things that are said, fault finding, gossip, nagging, tearing down. There are a lot of people who are like that. She's never like that. She doesn't tear down. She builds the house. She builds up. And I'm not talking about the physical house. I'm talking about the people that live within it, who've moved from all of these other houses. Because the houses are just places for us to stay, if you hadn't noticed. The home is the people that live inside that home that she builds. And she's even willing to, and I'm okay with this. Some of this may be individual, but if she lets a few little things go in the house because she's tending to the kids, I'm okay with that. I say she's spending her time where it's more valuable if she gives up a little cooking and cleaning for the people in it. Or she gives up some management of the physical home for the people in it. That's a woman who knows the priority of what's most important. And on that case, her career is us. While a lot of people have chosen, a lot of women would say, well, I can't do this. What about me? What about my time? What about my fulfillment? Her fulfillment has been wrapped up in us. And she's got a PhD in that. And what price could you put on a virtuous woman? That price is above anything to me. You can't put a dollar price tag on her being the maker of our home. And if you were to just take a practical thing and add up all the taxiing and the chef work and the nursing and the educating, and you were to add up all of those things, how much should I pay her for what she's worth? I can't afford it. I cannot afford her and pay her what she's worth. She needed a raise a long time ago. She didn't get a raise. Not monetarily. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. There are times where she doesn't even open her mouth at all. She says nothing. When she could say a whole lot. She chooses not to. But when she talks, it's beneficial. It's kind. it's productive. It's with love and with respect. I'm not saying that all of the details of every specific choice that we've made is what you need to make. What I am trying to say, if you could follow her spirit of submission to God's will and her willingness to follow the lead of the one in authority over her, even when sometimes that might be hard for her to do, and she's done it with a great attitude. If you could do that to anyone that's above your authority, whether it's, if you're a child, if you could obey your parents the way my wife obeys me, your parents are going to be happy people. If you would obey the elders the way my wife obeys me, you're going to be easy to lead. If you obey the government the way my wife obeys me, you're never going to break the law. If you obey God the way my wife obeys God, you're going to do. There might be people who might not like you because it might make other people look bad because they're not doing it. I think about, in closing, when it said that Noah condemned the world. I don't think he condemned the world because he went around saying it. He condemned the world by his example of rightful living while others did not. If you know in your heart you could be more submissive and follow the Lord's lead the way Melina follows me, what's stopping you? You might have to swallow your pride and your ego a little bit. You might have to get rid of your selfish bone a little bit and stop doing what you want to do and be more like Jesus, who said, "Not as I will, but as you will." Follow the Lord. That's what he did. He was obedient to his Father. Why not be obedient to Jesus? He gave his life for you. Believe with all your heart that he's the Son of God. Confess, "I believe that he is." Be ready to follow wherever he leads. Be baptized for the remission of your sins. If you're not a Christian, what's stopping you? If you are a Christian, are you following the Lord the way you should? If not, why not? Stand as we sing.